Well, it's 2:01, so we're gonna get started. Thanks, to all.
I promise everything will be all right.
Thanks to all of you for coming today in our continuing series here at the Acton Nature Center Library on nature and the environment. This is a quarterly lecture series that's been going on now for a couple of years, 4 years, more than a couple. So thank you all for coming. We have a special guest today, Ann Sansone, who is a fellow master naturalist in the North Central Texas chapter.
Well, North Texas.
I'm sorry, North Texas chapter, which covers Dallas,
area.
Kaufman, and Rockwall counties. Okay, so just north and east of us.
Yes, we call it the carburetum. Wink, wink. They need more natives. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So anyway, Ann comes to us. She is a Texas master naturalist, so qualified in 2018. Active with their chapter, involved with their DEI committee. She does volunteer work at Cedar Ridge Preserve, the Tennyson Park Pollinator Garden, and the White Rock Lake Park Prairie Remnants. She is a school teacher, as she taught in the Dallas ISD for 29 years and early childhood, pre-K, kindergarten, first grade. So a lot of you act like little kids anyway, so she's gonna be, she knows how to.
This is a tougher audience today.
And currently substitute teaches in Richardson ISD. Of course, being a master naturalist, she's interested in everything, but her special interest is in insects. She indicated bumblebees, native bees, butterflies, and moths. So she's also the former board member and chapter president of Native Prairies Association of Texas. So she's got a nice background to come talk to us. I remind you, if you get your cell phone with you, please make sure they're in a silence mode. Also, I'd like to let you know, she brought some native plants over here. Mom. She brought some native plants over here from Randy Turner's plant sale yesterday.
Randy Johnson,
Randy-
that's okay.
Okay.
Randy Johnson Organics.
Okay, gotcha. Some for sale over here at a discount. So you might want to check those out before you leave, and they're, of course, native plants. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ann.
Thank you.
And you can see, there's her talk right there.
Thank you. Thank you. So glad to be here. Thank you to Malia for inviting me. I was listening to everybody, well, kind of eavesdropping, and I can tell that a lot of you are already dialed in. Sounds like you're already doing some native plant gardening, or you're super interested in it. And that just makes me feel so good. It's fun to be around people who are talking the talk, right? And maybe walking the walk. Hopefully after today, that'll be the case. So the title of my presentation is Native Texas Plants Invite Life into Your Yard. And so, often we have that monoculture of the St. Augustine or the Bermuda grass, and then our non-native shrubbery. And while some of that might support some birds and bees and butterflies and insects, for the most part, our native species need much more, right? They co-evolved over thousands of years. So my understanding is you pretty much understand the why, but that's why I wanted to include invite life, because you certainly will see from my photos that it's if you build it, they will come. I know that a lot of you also are familiar with the entomologist Doug Tallamy's work, and how he is helping to educate people about converting their lawns if you want to be really ambitious. But you don't have to be that ambitious. You can also just start with 5 to 10 species, maybe in a much smaller area. So reading his work was kind of eye-opening for me, especially considering the decline in insect populations. So I love this quote from him: "Insects are not optional. It is not okay if they disappear. Insects are the primary drivers of our ecosystems. If they go, we go." And those insect populations, I think, just informally, or what I notice in my own yard, is I'm not making as many observations as I used to be. I'm not seeing as many bumblebees. I'm not seeing what I used to see. So it's just kind of interesting, but still, I feel like we need to, help them along, especially because bumblebees are threatened. So that's real important to me. That picture is I think it's a flower scarab, a flower beetle. We often don't think that beetles are pollinators. They're excellent pollinators. So just in the pink evening primrose that I let grow, that occurred naturally in my hell strip. So the hell strip is that grassy area between the sidewalk and the curb. So, just kind of look around to what you already have and see what life is there. We care about native bees. So, so much focus on saving the bees is directed towards honeybees, but because that's a managed crop, so to speak, pretty much those populations, despite their sites, they're not in as much danger as our native bees. So managed honeybee colonies supplement the work of native bees, not the other way around. In a study of 41 different crop systems worldwide, honeybees only increased yield in 14% of the crops. Who did all the pollination? Native bees and other insects. And then I loved that headline that I found, a few years ago, but more and more municipalities are incentivizing their citizens to make those lawn conversions or reduce their water usage, and they'll incentivize it. I'm not sure if Minnesota still has that program. Sometimes they're temporary programs, but it's kind of interesting. There's another headline from the Washington Post. Bumblebees are dying across North America and Europe as the climate warms, scientists say. There's a lot of arguments. I was, reading online about that maybe our native bees will be able to adapt to some of the non-native species. So like I noticed in my yard, the abelia that I did not get rid of, has some ecological services, but that'll take time to see. But there is interesting research about, as the weather changes, we can already see those changes as staying warmer much later. And so when things are blooming, when things are not, what insects do you see? What insects do you not see? And, there might be some ecological services that are being provided by some of the non-natives. So that's something to consider, kind of interesting research out there. That's a Salvia azurea, which of course the bumblebees love those blue blossoms. We care about birds. So habitat provided by the native plants can help birds adapt and survive amid a changing climate. And then there's the headline from another source, that's National Zoo. But I think we all, are aware of that statistic too, that birds are declining. Audubon points that out. Here we go. This is a shot of my garden probably 2 years after I installed it. And you'll see that, I didn't do the whole yard. I did probably about 3/4 of it. And I already had those bricks, so that's my border. It helps to keep, believe it or not, it really is effective at keeping the Bermuda runners from coming in. I rarely have to go pull those out. And then the meme here is from Pollinator Friendly Yards on social media. And so that shrink the lawn movement, that's quite becoming mainstream, I think. And especially in communities where water scarcity is an issue. Like I've noticed when I've gone to Austin, even years ago, they seem to be more dialed in with, and a lot of their yards had natives. You could go down in any neighborhood and you'd see mostly natives. And, I think around Dallas, that's somewhat true, still hasn't really caught on. So it's interesting that, making that paradigm shift. I am noticing it more and more in shopping centers. they're putting in natives, and that's wonderful because it saves on water usage. Okay, so this is, again, this was in May of 2019. You'll see some pictures from when I first installed in May of 2017. So I'm just in an older established neighborhood built in the 50s in Dallas. I grew up with a Marine World War II veteran father who had a perfect yard. I mean, he mowed, he fertilized, he edged, it was perfect. And that's what I was doing for a really, long time. I bought my house in the mid-90s. So really from the mid-90s until 2017, when I had this epiphany, just from learning, from my master naturalist training, from learning about the prairie remnants in Dallas. So once you quit weeding and feeding, you may be surprised to see what's in your yard. I just love the way it ended up. And I'll get into how I did that right now, I do believe. Okay, let's see. Oh, we're on the signage. Let me point that out. So Xerces Society, that's the old sign up there. Here's their new one. It's much more colorful. So however, like that's a $66 donation. Okay, that's pretty pricey, but you're supporting them. And so signage is, good for your neighbors. They want to understand why you're doing what you're doing. Also, NIPSOT, Native Plant Society of Texas, if you're a member with them, their signs start at about $29. And they are in English and Spanish, and they also have a member sign. So using signs to inform your neighbors, or perhaps the city code inspector. I've not been called on that. I live in a neighborhood. But that can come up. That can come up in HOAs too. Let's see. NPAT, Native Prairies Association of Texas, also has signs, and they're pocket prairie signs, and they start at about $60. And let's see, you can make your own. I have made my own on online sign websites. And then you can also just make your own on your computer and laminate it, staple it to a wooden stake. But I would encourage you to have some kind of signage as a cue to care. And we'll talk about cues to care. Well, actually, yeah, it's a term coined by Joan Nassauer in her paper, 1995 paper called Messy Ecosystems, Orderly Frames. So I love that term. I learned it from Benjamin Vogt, who's a landscape designer in Nebraska. We'll talk about him a little bit, but that cues to care. So in this picture, the cues to care would be the sign and then the brick border. And again, I had those bricks. They're not beautiful flagstone. That's outside of my budget. Sometimes I look at flagstone and really want that. And then more purists, my purist native gardener friends, don't like any border. They like a natural border. But I will say they're frequently going around the edge of their garden. So between the established lawn and the garden, like with a shovel edge, and making that edge, sharp, and keeping those Bermuda runners at bay. And I felt like this would work, and it really has worked. I can come home from work, walk around the garden, and I maybe see a runner and just easily pull it. So that has worked for me. Okay, let's see. Have to go this way. Okay, here we go. Okay, when I was first motivated to do a lawn conversion, I was like, gosh, how am I going to go about this? I knew for me, I didn't want to use chemicals. I didn't want to expose myself to using Roundup, but that certainly is an option. You just have to figure out what works for you. So I seemed to hone in on the solarization, which is also sometimes frowned upon because it can kill the microbes in the soil. Also because of the plastic waste. So Benjamin Vogt in his book, Hurry Up, talks about the pros and cons of several methods. But I'm just going to tell you what I did. So after reading all of the methods, I knew for my back, I did this 7 years ago. So I had just come out of a bulging disc, right? So I was looking for something that wasn't going to be physically rough on me. And after, and I didn't have to do the lasagna method. I didn't want to collect a lot of cardboard. I didn't have easy access to cardboard. So I knew this was going to be super easy, and it was. So I decided on solarization. I had read this article in the Christian Science Monitor over and over again, and then I just kind of adapted it for me. And I knew it worked for me. And Benjamin Vogt stresses that too. Think about your different methods and think about what works for you, your body, and your pocketbook. So solarization uses the heat of the sun's rays to cook plants, weed seeds, nematodes, some insects, and soil pathogens in the uppermost layers of soil. And then as I've already said, following the directions in the article were quite helpful. And I'll talk about how I went about this. So my mantra was keep it simple, okay? So I didn't want the labor of digging up turf grass. I had done that with a friend in the Tennyson Park pollinator garden. And you will hear people say it's the only way. It is a good way, but it is so hard physically to do that. And without running a, sod cutter, which that can be tough. That can be labor intensive, hard to handle the machine. You have the cost, you're rolling up the turf. So I didn't want to dig up the turf grass. So what I did was I scalped it. My mower goes down to 2 inches. And then I string trimmed it. And I used the low-cost tarp, painter's tarp. And I went to Home Depot yesterday to look at the millimeters of it. So like a 6 mil thickness is probably the best. There's a 3 mil, and I think it looks like it's too thin. That'll break down quicker in the sun. But the 6 mil was about right. And I'll show you a cardboard option, but for the Bermuda, I would say the plastic sheeting did best. And I did not use black. There's a lot of discussion about using black or clear or semi-opaque. So the 6 mil is semi-opaque, and it worked beautifully. By September, you can uncover it, rake up the dead plant material and plant the natives. And you also, at the end, use a minimum amount of compost and mulch at time of planting. I knew I had good blackland soil, so really amending with a lot of compost for the natives is not necessary. So it was a thin layer of compost that I just kind of raked in easily, and then a thin layer. I would not even say I had 2 inches of mulch, and we'll talk more about that later. So you save money. You're not spending a lot of money on compost or mulch. Let's see what else. Let me look at my notes. Yeah, just to fit the method that fits you and your philosophy. And also for me, it was being chemical free, low cost, and easy. So I'm gonna advance. Okay, there we go. So that's what it looked like. And actually I can look at that and know I probably didn't have 6 mil. That was probably lesser. And really I only had to reapply part of it once. So I did this in June, late June, because I was looking at my pictures in 2017. And like I said, I scalped it, used the string trimmer, and you do wet it before you put down the plastic. I used bricks and landscape pins. And it sat like that till late September. You'll see in the other picture with the cardboard, that was in the front, that was all monkey grass or mondo grass. My brother did help me. He was visiting, needed something to do. He used a pickaxe and he got all that mondo grass out. And until I had plants to plant it, I just put cardboard down and, you know, waited until I had some plants. Now, on the side of my house, I had a lot of monkey grass. And after a few years, you know, you get even more infirmed maybe with a bad leg or knee or a bad back. And I didn't even cut my monkey grass, but I had these big sheets of cardboard and it was hot. And that monkey grass starts to creep right into your yard. And I thought, I want more natives on the side of the house. I just put that cardboard on top of the monkey grass, smushed it down with rocks and bricks, waited all summer, pulled it off after the summer, and that worked. And I hardly had to pull any monkey grass out. I could plant my natives into it, and I used all volunteers from my established garden to put into the side. So I didn't even take that step of scalping the monkey grass, and it worked. So anyway, I'll pause here because if there's any questions here live or on Zoom, this is usually where I get the most questions because people don't really believe that it kills the Bermuda, but it really did. Okay, yes.
Having a hard time in my yard with sedge,
Yeah, yes,
and I'm chemical free,
yes.
but that means I'm pulling.
Is it the nut sedge? Okay,
But from what I understand from reading, I'm also stimulating it.
Yes.
I'm pulling it. So.
yes.
So I keep getting more. It's like, you know, I don't know, Groundhog Day.
Is it in your native garden? Do you already have a native garden established? Do you pull and then either replace it with something or mulch it?
Mulch
little
it
thin?
and have some luck.
Okay,
We've even tried to put some, you know, to move some rocks in there. you know,
Right.
And I have a ton,
it is tough.
but so pulling is all I can do. Is
Right.
that correct?
I would
You
say-
make that work with cardboard.
I would try that. Is it in a sunny area? I would
It's very
definitely
sunny.
do that, even a small piece of cardboard. Take your boxes and yes, try it.
Cause it's so much.
Yeah.
It's like Groundhog Day. pull
I
it
don't-
3 days later.
And I don't have to battle that too much. So yeah, I would just say try it.
That's feedback.
And I don't have firsthand experience on a big, you know, I just don't get a lot of that. I get other things and I have some management challenges, but
Okay.
that's
I'll
not
try
one of
that.
them.
I just-
Yes,
We battle it all the time too.
Nut sedge.
When we pull it, I think it just makes it mad.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you're not like really getting in there with, something that you can find in that, which.
Yes.
From me to you.
sometimes we
And
can.
do encourage it by pulling it, so,
right.
what I have personally been doing, and it seems to help, but you have to be, you know, like, you gotta be vigilant. right?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yes.
Be vigilant. All the like brown paper that comes in if we order anything online, Amazon,
Mhm.
I save that. And then if I see a patch coming, I get my paper from my Amazon box and I put 2 or 3 layers because it's pretty thick. Fold it over, put it on it, and I mulch it heavily. And
They
that
can't hear them as
will,
well
and
as
then
they
when I
can
see
hear
it
you.
coming in another, you know, in a year, I do it again. But it will kind of really help, but you kind of have to, if you
Oh,
don't
it's
do
better to
anything,
be
then
going
it
out there
takes
pulling it.
over, but I have been successful.
So you're
with
leaving that brown
now.
paper down there.
Yeah,
It's-
leave it
Leave it
down.
there.
Yeah.
Cover it with paper and the paper first, and then the mulch, that paper decomposes and then the
mhm,
mulch is there.
mhm.
It may come back, but then I'm back on top of it.
But then it wouldn't be as much, because I didn't realize the very first year I lived here, that pulling it was.
And every time you pulled it, then you like,
Mhm.
I was like.
yeah.
And just for those on Zoom, the question was about nut sedge.
Yes.
And how you manage that. And because when you pull it, you might be stimulating it, therefore more grows. So there were suggestions made to try solarizing it and, or by using cardboard or paper. Yes, Malia?
I've also heard using molasses.
Oh,
Time will tell. I
Okay.
haven't tried that yet.
okay, I've not heard that, but,
Yeah,
mhm,
it's been
Mhm.
cardboard mulching.
Mhm.
I tried the very hot water, and that did do.
oh,
it.
that's interesting.
And
yeah.
then I read an article about trying vinegar. And
Right.
that didn't kill it.
Yeah, and that can be, sometimes too harsh for your nearby plants. Yeah, the vinegar can be harsh.
Yeah, I was.
You know,
Thank you.
yeah, and we'll go back to it. We'll move on. And I do want to point out, it really is amazing that this worked. But when you think about the heat, this gets a lot of sun, my front yard does. And not so much in the morning, but you know, in the afternoon, let me think, I face west. Yes. So anyway, I rarely have anything come up that I have to weed in this area. And really that ended up being about 10, maybe 15 by 20, 15 by 30 at the most. And I am rarely weeding. Now, as the mulch has broken down that I put in 2017, I don't remulch a lot. You really don't have to, because as the plants grow, they provide their own cover, and you want natural green mulch. You really do. And because you want bare soil for the native bees. And hindsight being 2020, and I'll address it on a slide to come, that any bare areas, Benjamin Vogt is a real advocate for, you fill that in with your native grasses and your native sedges with a matrix planting. Okay, then that's going to be more green mulch. And then you have all that root competition. And that is, you know, is rebuilding the soil, it's keeping the nut sedge out. So that probably tells us, you know, there's a gap there that a native plant may address. And there are some aggressive native plants that you have to think about, do you want them in that spot or not, that sometimes can push that stuff out. But anyway, I'll go ahead. Let's see. Yeah, the plastic sheeting at Home Depot, the 6 mil, was like $39.78 in a roll. When I bought it, you could just pull off a big roll, what you wanted, kind of like buying fabric at the fabric store. Now it's all just pre-boxed. But for me, it was easier. And I think that heat through the plastic is what did it. Oh, when we pulled off the plastic, I had Randy Johnson just come by. You know, he took a handful of the soil and commented right away that the tilth of the soil looked good. You know, it was loose. He liked what he saw. I didn't really know what I was looking at. You know, we tend to malign the black clay, the black land soil. We think it's bad soil. We need to add shale, we need to amend it, and you really don't. And so he was pleased with the way it looked. He said, "Nah, yeah, you can sink your plants, put a little bit of compost, put your mulch, and you're good to go." So, yeah, it was surprising how well it worked. The cardboard, you know, you can get for free, or you can also order it from shipping companies. I did order some later, some big sheets of cardboard. And really that was kind of a splurge. You don't have to do that. You can get more crafty about having a source for it. But I liked having the big sheets for the monkey grass areas. Okay, moving forward. Okay, so your plant list. So for my project, I was instructed to, and Benjamin Vogt talks about this. You probably have some native plant favorites already that you want in your garden. There's a variety of sources between Native Plant Society of Texas. You can put in your zip code. They'll give you a list. You can go to wildflower.org. That's Lady Bird Johnson's site. You can just Google wildflower.org cross timbers, and you're gonna get over 1,700 species with a picture. So if you're not sure what will work in your ecoregion, those are two good resources right there. You really don't have to, you know, you can read and read and read and read, which I did, a bunch of Texas wildflower books. But if you want to get started, I would say those would be the top two resources. Ask your friends. Anyway, I, you know, had my list and then Randy suggested some to me. And so this was about 40 species. And we, you know, it was old school. He just wrote them out. And that's what I started with. And I would say all of them took and did very well and were robust. I only lost my Arkansas yucca, and it was because I didn't have good drainage. You know, I should have built it up a little bit when I planted it. It needed some more drainage, but other people in my area haven't had a problem with their Arkansas yucca. So they are tough and hardy and robust. Even a 4-inch pot will do beautifully because that's what they evolved, right? In our Texas landscape, and they know what to do. Let me see. My budget was about $300. So that's pretty much what I spent. When I used wildflower.org, let's see. Yeah, and NIPSOT. So the wildflower.org will give you 1,760 species, and the NIPSOT list is about 237 species. Was there a question? Oh, okay, more about plant lists. So Travis Beck is an author that Benjamin Vogt quoted in his book, Prairie Up. And Travis Beck is the author of Principles of Ecological Landscape Design, and he states, the more plants you have from the same ecoregion, the more ecosystem function you have. So that was my goal. So I was told, diversity. That way you're addressing different native bees. Some bees are generalists, some bees are specialists. So the more that you have, the better. And the goal is functional biodiversity. You want to create a regionally appropriate nature-based garden that reflects local plant communities. So I think most of you are on board with making that shift in your landscape. I heard one time that it can be hard to make that shift to natives because we grow up going to big box stores, right, with our families, or we grow up with landscaping that is always pansies, Gerber daisies, beautiful. That's what I did. And there's really nothing wrong with that, but that's what we're used to. It did take me a while, maybe a year of reading just to familiarize myself with the wildflowers. Because other than taking a country drive, I really never saw wildflowers in Dallas, Texas. I don't think I understood that I was standing on ancient Blackland prairie, until a restaurateur wanted to build a restaurant on one of our prairie remnants, and people got up in arms, and I was like, no, we can't do that. That's ancient, endangered ecosystem, the most endangered ecosystem in North America. And so I just had this shift that's what I should be focused on. So if you're not familiar with some native plants, I would say the NIPSOT source and the wildflower.org source, or just taking a walk and taking pictures, just familiarizing yourself with them. In person is kind of the best on a nature walk. Let's see. I planted in October of 2017. So I had done all that solarizing. And now Randy did help me with staging the plants based on what he knew their size would be. I could do that now. And then you can also just, when you're looking at those plants on wildflower.org, when you're reading the specifications, make note of that. So this is what it looked like right after I planted. And that's a lot of mulch. Now, reading Benjamin Vogt, now that I've had a few years to keep on researching and reading and learning, this is where he would stress that you can fill in the gaps with the native grasses and sedges. Most of those are forbs. I don't even think I had no native grass and sedges. Now in my gaps, that's what I'm working on, is adding sedges and native grasses. And he has some recommendations in his book, Prairie Up. But that would add cost, right? If you bought grass plugs or sedges, so you can do it later. And he points that out in his book. But that's what it looked like at first. And let's see. This was the bed that was the monkey grass, and that was cleared with pickaxe. And I got those inland seedlings from a friend. And that stuff is so hardy. So instead of monkey grass, I have, a native Texas plant that is providing an ecological service now. And so, it is low maintenance. It's shade grass, blooms from June to September, attracts butterflies. It is a host plant for some species. Seeds eaten by birds and stems and leaves used as nesting material by birds. And then I have so many volunteers from that I can dig those up, put them in a dishpan, put a little water in it, give the dishpan to a friend. He can put that in her garden and said they've been doing beautifully. So that's a native plant for dummies is what I call that one. There's several of them, right? It's no. And a lot of rain. I don't have gutter, so you can see where a lot of the rain is in that. Let's see. I thought that was the. Oh. I'm so sorry. I gotta go the other way. Anyway, rain falls off, and that's a good way to mitigate drainage. Inland sea oats are used a lot for erosion mitigation as well. So let's see. And then this is so neat to me. The native plants, even the ones I brought, so you can see how there's very little, right, green foliage on the top, and then look at those robust roots. So the massive root systems of prairie plants extend deeper into the soil than the stems that rise above it. These densely tangled roots provide a variety of ecosystem services, slows runoff, reduces soil loss, lessens the severity of flooding, and rebuilds the structure of damaged soil. So that's from the Tallgrass Prairie Center. I think they're based in Iowa. But I just love that. And when you think about, when I think about you have replaced your lawn with prairie, Texas native plants, prairie plants that have those deep roots and all the ecological ecosystem services they're providing below ground too. It's amazing. And it'll just heal your soil. If you've been using fertilizer or weed and feed like I was for years and years and years, it'll rebuild. Those prairie roots will help rebuild your soil. Let's see. In that bed, I'm gonna go back. In this bed too, in the front, I planted white avens, golden Alexander, which I have, and Turk's cap. And Turk's cap is easy. That's another native plant for dummies. And so is golden Alexander, which is an early spring bloomer. Also, I'm going to go back a little bit again. So in these different species, they included, you want early bloomers and late bloomers. So you want this cycle of blooms from early spring to late fall. And I did, and Randy helped me with that, but you can also find that information online. So that is true. And also like planting in odd numbers, 3s, 5s. Typically, sometimes we did 1, depending on the species and how big it got. But you can't really tell in this picture. A lot of those were small, mostly 4-inch. But a 4-inch plug or pot will give you quicker results, than seeding, although seeding can work as well. Let's go ahead and go this way. Okay, so now I'm going to just show you some species that I included in my garden that you may or may not be familiar with. So the purple prairie clover. And I just love this one, bloom time May to July. And then good source of nectar for butterflies, insects, attracts birds too. Host plant for the dogface butterfly larvae. So I also want to point out, like in my garden, I leave those stems. So those stems are just up. I really don't clean up the garden till the temperature of the soil is 50 degrees or above for at least a week. And that way you also know what was there. I can look at the stems and seed heads if they're still intact and know what was planted there if I don't have it marked. Oh, and also just pointing out, there's the reward. So for me, that was so motivational to be seeing the insects on those plants almost right away. It really was true. It's so cliche, but if you build it, they will come. So, and I love the pollen basket is full, right, on that bee. That might be a honeybee, I'm not sure. Just a European honeybee, but look at those pretty orange flower structures with the purple. I think that's so pretty. The horsemint, the Monarda citriodora, it's attracted to nectar-seeking bees, butterflies, and insects. Leaves can be used to flavor foods. You can make tea from that. They're so fragrant. I don't know if you've ever rubbed them between your thumb and forefinger. They're so fragrant. Very medicinal. I love that pagoda-like structure. People call it, horsemint is a common name. Does very well. Again, there's a native bee. I'm pretty sure that is a carpenter bee. The green milkweed, for the monarchs, right, have host plants. So Asclepias viridis, bloom time April to September, attracts monarch butterflies and native bees. Okay, when you get, how many people are familiar with planting or trying to plant milkweed? Okay, and do you get discouraged? Yeah, okay. So when you first get the plant in a pot, it might look like nothing and like nothing's there, but there's probably a taproot there. And so just mark where you planted it, don't disturb it. It may be that it comes up in a year or two. Mine came up pretty well, and they'll kind of move on their own. And sometimes they'll bloom and leaf out beautifully, sometimes they won't. And I would say of all the native plants, that is the most mysterious or erratic performer. We're just not used to it, right? But don't give up on it, But anyway, it attracts monarch butterflies and native bees. And again, just depending on the weather, it just comes and goes, looks different at times. It kind of, with the fall rains, it kind of leafed out again. It didn't bloom, but it looked different than it did before. And that's just the way that it is. The monarch caterpillar eats the green milkweed leaves and obtains the cardiac glycosides, which make it toxic to predators. And sometimes I won't see the caterpillars, but I'll see the frass. So the frass is their waste. And it's big, you can see those great big balls of waste. And that's how I'll know. And then, sometimes the caterpillars will be underneath the leaf. But yeah, that made me happy, right? And they're just eating, that one's eating the pod. So let's see. I'm trying to use that pointer, but it's not working. That's okay. But that monarch larva is eating the seed pod, and you will get milkweed bugs. Are you familiar with those? Here was another gift. You want bugs eating your plants, right? That's the ecological service they're providing, and that milkweed will withstand it. So you don't have to spray them off. You don't have to use insecticide soap. You just leave it. And they're really interesting to watch and they're actually kind of beautiful. I love that red color, but they're on the seed pod. Milkweed supports an entire community of insects, milkweed bugs, aphids, and lightning beetles. Every time I've gotten aphids, either on my pink evening primrose or the milkweed, that's typically the only time I'll see pests, in quotation marks, pests. The ladybugs always come. Like it'll be like a matter of days and I start seeing ladybug larvae or the ladybug adults. And it's okay, you want them eating it. This is ironweed, Veronia baldwinii, bloom time July through November. Attracts birds and butterflies, a late season nectar source, so that's a fall bloomer, a summer fall bloomer for butterflies and bees. Bee brush, which is Aloysia fortissima. This is an airy shrub. It's probably about 6 feet tall and about 4 feet wide now. It smells like vanilla. It's a lot of small pollinators. Bloom time March through November. After a rain, it'll burst into bloom, then it'll die off. It'll rain again, it'll burst into bloom. But yeah, the bees love it. It's very airy. You don't really trim it, prune it. You do need space for it. Let's see. There's I think that's an assassin bug nymph on the Aloysia blossoms. That's what they look like up close. The lead plant, Amorpha senescens, bloom time June to July. Nectar plant for insects. Native Americans use the leaves for smoking and making a tea. Roots can reach 16 feet and spread to 3 feet. This is the plant that when our pioneers were plowing the prairie, it would make a zipper-like sound and it was tough to plow through. So it has deep roots, but I love that plant. It's one of my very favorites. It has some Monarda fistulosa, and I'll show you that slide. And it's kind of encroaching, it's more aggressive. So it's kind of encroaching. So now I've gotten better about just thinning out the Monarda fistulosa and giving the lead plant a little bit more room. There it is up close. That's pretty striking. The nodding onion, Allium cernulum, bloom time June to August. Clear street butterfly, hummingbirds. There's a little factoid about the city of Chicago getting its name from the Algonquin word for it. But that's a beautiful plant. Picture sage, that Salvia azurea that attracts the bumblebees. I just love that one. It gets about 5 feet tall. It can get taller, it can be shorter. It is a later in the summer bloomer, yeah, September to November. One of my very favorites, rattlesnake master. I have about 6 of those for sale today. Some of them might have been, but this is an indicator species. If you're walking on land and you see a rattlesnake master, that's pretty much a high quality prairie. So I love that rattlesnake master. Attracts an astounding number of pollinators, including predatory wasps for natural pest control. That's another reason why you want your pests, because those predatory wasps or flies need, right? They need food to eat too. But it supports an at-risk species of moth, the Eryngium stem borer moth. It attracts bumblebees, yellow-faced bees, sweat bees, beetles, flies. Once credited with a variety of curative powers, and I think that's not necessarily true. But here's what it looks like up close with some different pollinators on it. And then I have a better picture by the plants that I brought. It's quite showy, very charismatic plant. This is the lance leaf coreopsis. This is another what I term a native plant for dummies. This has really colonized. I would say that this is aggressive. It kind of moves around. It's moved from the front to all towards the back of the garden. I need to start thinning that out. I'm getting better about management issues. Those are the most challenging issues for me now. But it attracts butterflies. It's the most common coreopsis and easy to grow, drought tolerant. It's just a profusion of yellow blooms, very easy. And you can transplant that and pull it up and put it elsewhere and it'll transplant really well.
Question. Is
Mhm.
that the really tiny one that grows only on the side of the road?
No, I'm wondering if you're talking about four nerve daisies or
Well,
the
it's-
tinctura, maybe.
Sometimes it only gets maybe through just.
Are the leaves really thin?
Yeah.
It makes me think it's four nerve daisy, but I'm not sure because that is so prolific throughout Dallas and so many people, like I don't have four nerve. I wish I did, but I'm thinking that might be four nerve daisy. And this is, and that could be a coreopsis. I'm not familiar with the four nerve daisy genus. Is anybody familiar with the genuses of that?
It's tetramerous,
Okay,
tetramerous ginkgos.
okay. So, yeah, but that four nerve daisy is a good one. It's a great one to include in your landscape. The fiery skipper on the lance leaf coreopsis, so I'll see a lot of skippers. But what's so interesting is this species of caterpillar, a butterfly as larvae eat Bermuda and St. Augustine grass. So there is an ecological service for lawn. It's just not a lot of, it's not providing a lot of ecological services, but some. I love this plant, the Leavenworth Ringo, Eryngium leavenworthii, bloom time, July to September. So the purple pineapple with those blue stamens. It's a nectar plant, seeds for carnivorous birds, special value to native bees. Oh gosh, I love this one. It's prickly, but it's showy. So again, when you're talking about plant lists, if there's a plant that just really wows you, try to get a source for it or collect a little bit of seed, ethically collect if you see it out in the wild somewhere, just from one seed head. I've not tried to propagate it, but I do have seed. I need to start doing that too, but I love that plant. There it is before it turns purple. And there it is in all its glory. And that's an annual, I do believe. It's in the carrot family.
And there's a lot of it up in the nature center, so.
Great. That is great. Yeah. Great. Oh, so many neat pollinators on that plant. Yeah, to me, that's worth shooting for in your yard, in your landscape. The sweet coneflower Rudbeckia subtomentosa, bloom time July to September, special value for native bees. This has diminished and pretty much, I think, disappeared in my garden. And reading Benjamin Vogt's books, that happens. So your gardens can be dynamic, right? And as a gardener, that's what we do. We make those observations, you adjust. You know, I think I know where it might be. I thought it was gone and I kind of pushed some volunteers back. Oh, there it is. And then I just kind of have to release myself from, well, that's gonna happen. And that's been a newer lesson for me, but I loved that. And the narrow leaf coneflower, Angustifolia, that's our prairie coneflower. Bloom time May to July, attracts butterflies, more drought tolerant than purpurea. And I think I have one of those today. There's a Texas flower scarab on the Echinacea angustifolia. And the adults eat the pollen of many species of flowers. So like I said before, the beetles are just as important of pollinators as are moths and butterflies and bees. The Texas gay feather, the blazing star, this is Liatris mucronata in my yard. Bloom time, August to December, attracts butterflies and native bees. So I have 3 1-gallon Liatris today. And you'll see like the flower head, you know, is desiccated, but it has robust corms, CORMS corms, you know, underneath the soil. So if you did plant it now, it would be just fine and it would come back and be beautiful, just like this. it's getting in my yard, it's getting crowded out by the flame leaf acanthus, which is nearby. So I've got to make an adjustment there. Keeping that flame leaf acanthus, trimmed back more, maybe moving it, because I really want my liatris to be, able to be more robust, and it's kind of getting crowded out. Let's see, next, there's a up close, that might be it might be a Southern Plains, it might not be, but twice I've had a Southern Plains bumblebee, which are rare in my yard with my natives. And it's, using INAT, to me, it's always interesting when, to see who is looking at your observations and who's making note, whether it's professors elsewhere. But, when you see those big bumblebees across the yard, I'm, zooming towards them to get a photograph and be a citizen science and upload. But it just makes me so happy. I get so jazzed about the native bees and the bumblebees. This is the Monarda fistulosa, the wild bergamot, bloom time May to September. Lots of medicinal value, like the Monardas do provide us. It attracts butterflies, native bees, hummingbirds, birds. This is aggressive, but it's manageable. So, but I love it so much that it's hard for me to control it, but I'm getting better about that. I've got to get better. That's where maybe I'm lacking in master gardening skills, right? And it kills me to have to rid myself of blossoms. I'm always thinking one less blossom for a native insect. Well, I need to kind of let that go, because it's impinging on the lead plant. So, but I love that plant. There's an up close. I love that flower structure. That's I think a skipper, a fiery skipper on it, but I just love that color. And Lindheimer Lindheimeriana. Anyway, bloom time August to October, important source of food for birds, larval host for the sleepy orange and sulfur butterflies. I love this plant. It's also a prolific reseeder. I've tried to transplant the little seedlings. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but it is a prolific reseeder, but it's a legume, so it provides nitrogen in the soil. But I love that plant. There's an up close that was just interesting to me after a rain. So that the leaf is velvety. Yes.
Does the seed pod look like a peat pod?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it does. I wonder if let's see, do we see a seed? No, but yes, it does. It does. The rosin weed, Silphium integrifolium, bloom time July to September. Special value to native bees and bumblebees. What a prolific bloomer, right? But this got tall and floppy. So that floppiness was one of my big management issues. If I had to do it over again, I would put this in the backyard, or I would not include it in the front. So there's a school of thought that if you're putting in your native garden in your front yard and you want to avoid that floppy kind of messy look, in my yard, that wasn't a priority, although now it's starting to bother me in 2024, 2025. And so, so I probably won't pull it up, but I've started to Chelsea chop it, and it takes chopping. So I'm trying that on a few floppy species. So I can cut it by a third, by a half, but it is lovely. I love the leaf structure on it right here. Just love the way the sun was coming through the leaf. You can even see that insect and that opposite and alternate structure. Yes.
We have a similar problem with frostweed.
Yes.
Any
Really?
ideas of how to get it under control?
That's interesting, because mine isn't so floppy, but you can chop it. You can Chelsea chop it. I had never heard of that term till I was watching Benjamin Volk's seminars. And I forget where that term comes from, but usually master gardeners, experienced gardeners know it. We do it with our fall asters. So cutting it back by a third. You can cut frostweed. I mean, and you can almost be indiscriminate about it.
Mhm.
Chop, and it responds well.
And maybe we'll.
And I've done
It's
that.
Like 10 feet tall.
Yeah, you're right. Some of mine has flopped. There's one area in the back, my backyard is really a wildscape. My front's a little more controlled, but the back's pretty wild. But you're right, some of it is flopping. I just let it flop because it's in the back. But chopping it where it can take chopping. This can take chopping, the silphium can, and so can frostweed. So like buy a third in June or whenever you think. But my friend who runs the Tennyson Park Pollinator Garden, when we started to have that management issue with the silphium, we just started trying that, just chopping it, and it responded well. So that's all I can suggest right now. The flame acanthus, I call this my hummingbird feeder. Balloon time, you don't really have to put out hummingbird nectar when you have flame acanthus and Turk's cap. You really don't. And it gets so, you have to change it so often anyway, because we get so hot, right? And it grows mold. Well, I get so many hummingbirds on the flame acanthus and the Turk's cap, I don't really do the nectar anymore.
Mhm.
It does beautifully, flame acanthus does. It needs some space, but could be a good shrub substitute. Just beautiful. This Sexminia, it isn't a blackland prairie species, but I think it occurs more west, but it's another one that I call the native plant for dummies. Indestructible, transplants beautifully. I just love it. Bloom time, May to November, it's prolific. The larval host for the bordered patch butterfly. There it is with a variegated fritillary or some kind of fritillary on it. There's the border patch on the left. Now that border patch is on wine cup, not on the Zexminia. But that's a great little plant, real tough. This obedient plant, this is in the backyard. The bloom time, August to November. So that's a late bloomer. The bumblebees love it. So that's one of the fall bloomers. Attracts hummingbirds and butterflies. And then it gets its name because if you bend the flowers, like if you take your thumb or finger and you push the bloom over, they'll stay in that new position, hence the common name, obedient plant. It is somewhat aggressive, but again, it's been like 7 years. I'm okay with it in the back. It likes more moisture, and that part of the yard has a kind of, descends into a wetter part of the yard, not super wet, but it is aggressive. And I think that might be it on the, yeah, that's it. So, see. We have plenty of time, I think, for questions. And so if you have any questions, let me know. And then I have other management issues and more information posted up in the room that may address some of your questions. But I don't know if you want me to go through those or not before we get to questions. Yes, ma'am. That's a great question. And I totally would refer you, when you go to wildflower.org and you're looking at that plant list, I'm not so sure about the next slide. It'll tell you if it's deer or rabbit resistant. I know Benjamin Bott has a suggestion in his book that if you have a plant that the deer are eating, plant something near it that'll keep them away, something prickly. It might be an Eryngium leavenworthii, the Oringo, or something like that. Like you could companion plant if you didn't want to put a deer resistant structure around it. What does? Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea. I wish I knew more about that, but being in the urban setting, I don't have much experience with that, but I would refer you to look up that species of plant on the wildflower.org site and they'll, say whether it's deer resistant or not. Let's see, anything else?
Don't
Bernie?
forget to repeat the question. I'm getting.
Oh, that was a question about deer eating. Do you know what plant were they eating? Yeah, there are, you know what, but there really are deer resistant plants. Benjamin Vogt recommends this book by Nancy Lawson, The Humane Gardener, Nurturing a Backyard Habitat for Wildlife. And it's those issues, like what do you do? I haven't read this. I've read the other one, the Wildscape book. I should have probably read this since I was coming out this way. But it talks about how do we get along with the critters that might be in the yard. And some people may say, oh, you're inviting ticks and rodents into your yard when you have a wildscape or a native garden. And really, that's not necessarily true. And it's escaping me now, but he does address it in his book, or snakes. And you're really not. There's a reason for that. I'm so sorry that I can't retrieve it right now. But Benjamin Vogt recommended this for the very issue you're talking about. How do we make friends with the critters we might be inviting because we have this native landscape, especially in a more rural setting. Any other burning questions? Okay, just real quick, let's see, these are just some, if you need inspiration, this gentleman, Michael McDowell in Plano, this Plano Prairie Garden on Instagram, in his planobluestem.blogspot.com, he is such an inspiration. I mean, he lives, sleeps, eats, and breathes this. His garden is rather famous. Joey Santori, the guy who is the crime pays, but botany doesn't, irreverent lawn murderer enthusiast and native plant enthusiast. He's brilliant. He's often with Adam Black out in West Texas doing plant surveys and private consultations. But he visited Michael's garden and just was so excited by it since it's in an urban yard. He's been at it for years. He's a true expert. These were just my motivation and action steps in my yard. Really, when I stopped weeding and feeding, what came up in the backyard, even in the middle of the city of Dallas, was buffalo grass. My area used to be a dairy farm years and years ago before it was ever developed. So that's probably where that came from. My brother has an agronomy degree. I go, what is that grass? That does not look like Bermuda or St. Augustine. He goes, oh, that's buffalo grass. I was so excited. The pigeonberry was all along the fence line, probably from birds. Never saw it when I was weeding and feeding. Love that plant. Illinois bundleflower came up. Just think, that seed bank from heaven knows when, it was still there in my urban yard because I did not plant that. It came up. The horse herb, the straggler daisy, all over the place now because I don't weed and feed. I love this because when you're not weeding and feeding your yard, you'll start, it'll look bad, right? But this will start to grow in, and it provides ecological services. So this was a big eye opener for me, just stopping the weeding and feeding. Of course, the aggressive colonizers you're probably familiar with, which I battle, are the Carolina snail seed. It's a native, but if I let it go in my backyard, it would crawl over the golden Alexander or the frostweed or the switchgrass that I have in the back. So I kind of snip that often, right? That's mostly what I'm doing is just snipping the greenbrier, but that I don't have too much of that. And then my neighbor's bamboo, man, that's brutal, but it didn't deter me. It didn't deter me. So really, I'll just come home from school or, go out in my pajamas on a Saturday, Sunday morning, have my little pruner, clip, 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 because I can't dig it out and I'm not going to hire anybody.